This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works.
$1 million, Mr. Bond. You were wondering what it cost.
As a matter of fact, I was.
Forgive my not shaking hands. It becomes a bit awkward with these, a misfortune. You were admiring my aquarium.
With our thanks to Cubby Broccoli and family, the owners of the Bond series, and our apologies to the great Joseph Wiseman, who always played either immigrants or rabbis or immigrant rabbis, we have the actual Dr. No here. He's not wearing a leather glove, but he might just as well, because this is the guy who slew the plebiscite, that foolhardy thing that went through this neck of the woods recently at a cost of somewhere between $6 and $8 million. His real name is Jordan Bateman, and he's the BC representative for Canadian Taxpayers. Hello, Jordan.
Thanks
so
for having me.
now you're even with Mario, 3 appearances?
Exactly. I got to keep up with Conseco. And, actually, Mario, I was in the foyer of this very building waiting for the results of the election, the plebiscite results.
Yeah.
And with about 50 minutes to go, I'm nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. And who comes over but Mario Conseco?
Of course.
Mario says, Jordan, don't sweat it. My numbers are firm. You guys have got this in the bag. I would say 59, 41, kind of in that range. Sure enough, not quite, 62-38.
He said to me just the other day in an email, he said, I'm so proud that we were within, 3 points?
Exactly.
Amazing.
Tremendous.
So we're going to gloat for a few minutes before we talk about what should really happen later.
Yeah.
So let's do the gloating. First, for me, I got to say, A, congratulations. You did a wonderful job. B, what's with all these whiners, all these newspaper columnists and people, bad losers, sore losers, kvetching, oh, you people, how could you vote no? What's the matter? You people are fools. Huh?
Yeah, the idea that you're calling voters idiots, I'm not sure how that builds support for future plebiscites.
Yes.
The yes side blew this. Look, the yes side were up 13 points in Mario's poll in December.
Yes.
So if we believe that Mario was right, and the numbers proved he was in July, he was also right in December. They were up by 13 points. They had 150 organizations. They had all the voters lists. Heck, they had the power to actually tinker with the ballot itself.
Yes.
They put their advertising website on the ballot. And they still lost, thanks to the work that we did with the No TransLink tax campaign, and thanks to the everyday taxpayer in the Lower Mainland who said, A, I'm paying too much, and B, I don't trust TransLink to take any more of it.
Whose money paid for that plebiscite?
It was all taxpayer money on their side.
And
$7 million on their campaign and $6 million in the actual mechanical cost of the plebiscite.
Oh, so really it was more like $13 million.
Indeed.
And from what department, from what part of the purse do we know?
From TransLink, the City of Vancouver, the City of Surrey, and the City of New Westminster.
Okay, we're going to come back to this in the second half, but let's look at why everybody said I don't trust TransClunk. TransClunk has shown itself consistently to not be trustworthy.
Exactly.
Examples.
Well, we rolled out 80 different waste examples, one a day throughout the campaign. Everything from more symbolic numbers, right?
Yes.
$30,000 on the poodle on a pole at Main Street.
Yes.
Executive salaries, where we were paying the TransLink CEO. In fact, we ended up paying 2 TransLink CEOs.
Yes.
$150,000 a year more than the Prime Minister of Canada, more than what you pay other transit agency presidents in Portland, Seattle, in Toronto, and Montreal.
This is like a game you play with children. Yeah. We're firing the bad CEO, yay! Yeah. Oh, but we're still going to pay him for 5 years. Boo!
We're hiring a new one.
Yay!
Oh, and we're paying him the same as the old one.
Yeah, boo!
Yeah. And that was typical of the campaign, right? They were completely tone deaf to the fact that it's impossible not to have an experience with TransLink if you live in this region. I mean, they're a transportation agency. You run into the buses, the SkyTrain, the SeaBus, all the different things, the road, the Patello Bridge. But people have had bad experiences with TransLink. And the mayors thought TransLink was an advantage for them early on. We proved that it wasn't because we started reminding people, look, TransLink wasted your money here, 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 and here. And then that confirmed to people what they already knew, which is that company is not well run. And they ended up snowballing and voting no.
Here's one of the ironies. I just want to put this out on the table just for the record. I have no faith in TransClunk at all, except for one thing. I've never had the experience of encountering a bad bus driver. You know that every bus driver I've ever met while on buses has been helpful and jovial and often funny, and interesting to chat with if they have the time to chat.
Yeah. The secret is some of our best no voters were bus drivers. The frontline people get it. The hands and feet of the organization deserve support.
Yeah.
Let's backtrack a couple of years. I'm out at Scott Road SkyTrain station. I'm taking pictures of some TVs they had installed that aren't working that TransLink spent $40,000 a pop on.
Yes.
I'm taking pictures. Up on the rails above me, two guys are working on something, two SkyTrain maintenance guys. And they yell down, "Hey, taxman!" I'm like, oh no. Taxman! I'm like, oh, they're going to come down and beat me up with a wrench, right? Yeah. So I look up, I'm like, yeah? And they yell down, they're like, "Hey, keep up the great work. We think our bosses are a-holes too." And they give me the thumbs up. And stop. Guys, keep up the great work yourselves. You're doing a great job up there. And I wander up.
That's pretty funny.
The problem is the management. Look, the union supporting the yes side, even they would tell you if you put them on true serum, our bosses are running this company into the ground. But, they wanted more money for...
As I recall, you clocked something like 400 executives over $100,000.
Yeah, I think they're at 433 people, not just executives, but 433 people who make more than $100,000. Their top 7 all made over $275,000. Their CEO last year made $485,000. That's in a year where SkyTrain shut down twice, if you recall.
But see, I don't even have a problem with 1 or 2 executives making 3 or even 4. That's almost as understandable to me. Yeah. But 400 employees? Making 100 large? I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. I don't believe that. I mean, that's just...
It's a top-heavy organization.
Yes.
A lot of management. And I'm hopeful that this plebiscite defeat forces them to go and recalibrate how they're actually managing it.
Hey, let's try another one. My readings before and after are that in general, plebiscites don't work in modern democracies.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No, of course it's not true. Look, God forbid we ask the public what they want to do with their money, right?
Yes.
I guarantee you, if we were sitting here and the yes side had won 62-38, you'd have Greg Moore and Gregor Robertson, all these people coming here and saying, "David, you were wrong about TransClunk, and the people agree. We have the people on our side, and we're going to be even more aggressive and build even more stuff because the people are with us."
Yes.
It's just the fact they lost. That's where the sour grapes comes in.
But are you saying that in other jurisdictions in the world, these kinds of plebiscites have proved useful?
Sure. I mean, look, it proved useful a few years ago when they scrapped the HST. That was up to the people to decide. We have these referenda all the time.
But is it
on the City of Vancouver ballot every year? You go in and check up FMARC to approve their capital plan.
But isn't the idea of a plebiscite democracy kind of anathema, or at least 180 degrees from we elect you, make decisions?
No, because I think it's important that when we elect these politicians to make these decisions based within the framework we've already given them, based within the laws and the tax system that we've already given them. When they're coming in and saying, now we want a new tax, or now we want to do something new that's outside of our usual sphere, I think we deserve the right to talk about it. And let's remember, this was all started by Premier Clark, who promised it in 2013, an election campaign that no one thought she was going to win. She won, And then, to her credit, stuck to her guns on this.
We are having a psychic moment, because that's exactly where I was going to go. I could show you article after article here called The Blame Game, in which Moonbeam and the Premier are accusing each other of blowing it, okay? It's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. In my books, even though I'm not a big fan of our mayor, in my books, this is all on Premier Clark. What was she doing, and where has she disappeared to on this subject?
Well, I actually give the Premier credit for sticking to her guns. The mayors tried everything to talk her out of doing this.
Yes.
They begged, they whined, they delayed, they dragged their heels, they tried everything they could. And she said, no, if you want a new tax, you're going to have to go to the people. I put the blame on the mayors. The mayors were responsible for this plan. They were responsible to sell the plan. They were the ones who took the lead in campaigning, and they didn't deliver. Derek Corrigan, who, as you know, not my philosophical compatriot.
I understand.
But he was right. He was one of the only 3 mayors who stood against the other 19 and said, waste of money. You know, let's do some of the lower hanging fruit, to use a term. Let's fund a few bus routes here and there and find some cost savings to do that instead. And then we can get to the bigger picture items. The mayors wanted their grandiose plans and their big ribbon cuttings, so, you know, at the next election, and so they went with the big plan.
Yeah, well, you know, like him or loathe him, Corrigan is a character. He is one of a kind. So, are you surprised that the Premier has kept largely quiet since the plebiscite ended?
Yeah, I mean, she made the one comment. She made a statement, I think, a couple days after in the context of another press conference. But frankly, the Premier's been quiet on a number of issues these last couple of weeks. I can say, you know, I found the minister's comments, found them quite good. I think the ministry, the province itself, is headed down the right path. Whether or not the mayors actually get over their hurt feelings and work with them will be another question.
And while Moonbeam had an audience with His Holiness, you, sir, and you can tell us this after the break, which is imminent, you had an audience with His Holiness.
His Stoneliness.
His Stoneliness, the Minister of Transport.
Yes, in Todd we trust.
Stop it. Oh, brother. You're on a roll, buddy.
There you go. I'm good at puns.
Yeah, you're on a roll. And that was fruitful. You're going to tell us something amazing in a couple of minutes.
I will.
Okay. You spent a legendary $40,000.
Yes.
Which you got where? Crowdsourcing?
Yeah, private donations from average everyday people. It's all disclosed at notranslinktax.ca. You can go on and see who gave us more than $200.
Yes.
I will say half of the money came from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. They essentially matched donations.
Okay.
But here's my favorite stat from the whole campaign.
Yes.
For their yes votes, the yes side spent $23.44 in taxpayer money for every yes vote they got.
Per vote?
Per vote.
$23.
$23. The no side spent 8.5 cents for every no vote. No taxpayer money. I mean, that's a tremendous. It warms my heart to say it.
We're going to take a break and come back and talk about the future and solutions, but I've already got it. We're going to make you CEO of TransLink.
Heaven help us.
Yeah. Okay.
Heaven help them.
Dr. No, the real Dr. No is our guest, Jordan Bateman. We're going to take a little breather. Your chance to say hello on davidberner.com. Always happy to hear your emails until we're not happy to hear them, which happens sometimes. And also an opportunity for those folks who support us to say hello here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Back in a moment, right after this.
This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works.
When I played Prez, the president of the union, in the pajama game at Theater Under the Stars about 30 years ago, that was one of my songs. 7.5 cents doesn't mean a heck of a lot. 7.5 cents. 8.5 cents, Jordan Bateman, is what it cost for the no voters against $23 for the yes voters. Cute. Okay, so that was our gloating. Now let's talk about the future. Surrey Mayor Linda Hepner, she's got a plan. There's something she wants. You know, it's top of the line on her agenda, and that is some rapid transit. Rapid transit, if she gets to do it her way, which is light rail. I wish she'd come and do that out to UBC. $40 million per K against $250 million for subways.
Yeah, there's a great study by UBC professor Patrick Condon.
Yes.
And Condon looks at what it would cost to actually build a subway all the way to UBC. And his theory was you'd be better to spend, or you could take that money, put it in a bank account, and use the interest to buy every single kid who ever went to UBC a brand new Prius. Forever.
Exactly.
That's how expensive this thing is.
Exactly.
So, the idea that, Hepner is looking at and saying, look, light rail, are there trade-offs? Yeah, it's not as fast maybe as SkyTrain, and you have to have a driver, and it's on the ground so that, you have to work with other traffic issues.
That's wonderful.
But what Hepner's saying is, look, I want to move people within Surrey. She doesn't care about moving people from Surrey to Vancouver.
No, I understand.
She wants to keep people inside Surrey.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, then light rail probably does make more sense than SkyTrain.
Well, I'm such a city kid, I rarely go out to the burbs, but I was out in Surrey, Langley, and that neck of the woods the other day, and the traffic is pretty serious. And I would have been perfectly happy to wander around on light rail. So, do you think she has a hope in hell?
I do, and the truth is, long before the plebiscite, her predecessor, Mayor Watts, Diane Watts, was actually already had this project advanced to the second round of P3 vetting in Ottawa.
Yes.
And this is what we said throughout the campaign. This could happen anyways, or should happen anyways.
Yes.
Ottawa's going to come to the table this fall. It's a federal election. Swing ridings galore in Surrey. Every single one of them, Trudeau, Mulcair, Harper, they'll all show up there. They're all going to announce big spending for this.
Yes, of course.
The province has already said that they have their 1/3. Whether
the province will kick in 1/3.
Yeah. And whether Hepner raises the money through a P3 or through taking some development cost charges or another means, that will be up.
Well, that was one of the interesting parts of that she said she wanted to involve some private partnerships. And I thought
that's how the candlelight
I thought it was great. It was very, very creative. Okay, so Transclonc fires two of their leaders, and immediately Alan Garr writes this marvelously funny piece in the Courier, one of our sponsors, by the way, in which he says, two TransLink firings amount to bupkis. I guess a lot of people had to Google bupkis. But he's right, of course.
Yeah.
What did that do?
Well, what it did is it clears the decks for the next CEO to hire his or her own team.
Yes.
Look, Alan Garr has no leg to stand on this stuff because he was adamantly yes side and was pro-TransLink until we defeated this tax. So his stuff is irrelevant to me on this. But, by getting rid of these guys, this is, one of them was the communications guru and the strategic planner.
Yes.
Both of those are huge failures when it comes to TransLink. I think even TransLink supporters would say, they don't do a good job on communications or on strategic planning. The other guy had been demoted once before, and now is in charge of SkyTrain, and then he was bounced out. You've got to clear the decks so that the new CEO can come in with a new team, and hopefully a new culture will emerge there, one that puts customers and taxpayers first instead of putting empire building and executive perks first.
Regardless of what you just said about Alan Garr, I think I'd be surprised if you didn't agree with him that he says the biggest problems with Transclonc are long-term financing and the governance structure.
Yeah, and not so much the financing. Governance structure is an issue, although there's no rule that says they can't tinker with their governance themselves.
But isn't that the problem? Only they can tinker with their governance.
But there's no rule saying, for example, one of the big problems is the mayors don't have input into current spending. So we get a $7.5 billion transit plan that doesn't have a single dollar of efficiencies in it. It's just new spending. You could have struck a committee of 3 mayors and 3 board members and said, look, let's look at some TransLink operations. We're calling for a full independent core review of TransLink now. Let's get into the program spending and find out why we waste money on stupid things like $500,000 in public art here. And, why do we waste money on things that don't move a single person a single inch?
And why do we not also have an overseer? Why are they not answerable to someone or some group of someone's.
Yeah, and that's actually a recommendation I made yesterday to Minister Stone was
Yes.
that, I think the minister needs to have a more active role. I think that he needs to issue them an annual mandate letter to the board saying this is what we expect, just like he gets from the premier.
Yeah, for the sheer gossip value, how did this meeting occur? Who called whom?
I had a meeting with the premier's office while they were counting the votes.
Yes.
To give some ideas on what should happen next, no matter whether it was yes or no. To their credit, they were very kind to me, took a good look at the ideas, and I think are considering some, maybe not all, but definitely some of them.
Yeah.
This was a follow-up meeting with the minister to talk.
Let me just say this up front. If I hear in the next 5 years that you're running for office, I will kneecap you. Stay out of public office. Do us a favor.
Everyone's worried about my next job, but I love this job. I don't want to go anywhere.
Okay, so you and Stone got together and give us the takeaway.
The takeaway is I think he was open to the idea of a core review. We talked about having an independent agency doing it because anytime TransLink looks at TransLink, they say TransLink is great.
Of course.
So that's the problem.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the qualities of the next CEO.
Once every 20 years, Canadian Parliament looks at the correction system.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the correction system is firmly lodged in the 17th century like it's always been because no one looks at it.
Yeah.
So it's the same with TransLink.
Well, it's like a junk drawer in your house, right? Like you throw stuff in there and then every 6 months you got to clean it out or it overflows.
So
we got to do that at TransLink.
who might be the core review people, or what group of people or kind of people do you think might be in there?
There are independent consultants who haven't done work for TransLink in the past, but who have done work on TransLink who might be good.
Okay.
But I'm not going to throw names out because I'd like to see who comes forward. But let's make sure it's someone who doesn't have financial interest.
Do we bring in a person from Boston and a person from Dublin?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you might. Or MTR in Hong Kong is an interesting system. There are great systems out there that we could bring in.
Okay.
But they need to have the mandate. Look, we're looking to save money. Even if you saved a relatively small amount of money within that, say $30 million a year, that is a lot of bus routes you can expand on and do things that kind of cover off until they figure out what to do with it.
Did you have the sense, talking to Minister Stone, that he was simply amusing you, or that he seriously wants to get something done?
He wants to get something done.
He does.
Yeah, I feel like he does. And I think one of his important roles now will be mediating between the board and the mayors, because those two groups, even though they're tied at the hip at TransLink, hate each other's guts. I think the board, this is my perception, not his, I think the board blames the mayors for losing this. I think the mayors blame the board for misrunning TransLink. And now you're seeing mayors talk about leaving the process. I want these guys to act like grown-ups. The mayors and the board act like grown-ups, run this system efficiently, and say, look, the public have said we want efficiencies, let's work together to find them.
This is one of the things that I didn't understand even going into this fiasco. Michael Smith in a recent column says TransLink system has multiple boards of directors.
7 of them.
I don't get that. What's that?
Well, they have all these subsidiary companies, right? So if you notice, you'll see Coast Mountain Bus Company, BC Rapid Transit, West Coast Express. They used to have AirCare, that's now gone. Transit Police, and they all have their own boards. And the idea was 20 years ago, when we used to have strikes all the time in the public sector, they wanted to have separate companies so that if the bus drivers went out,
if one thing went, the other thing
SkyTrain could still run.
It's like,
we haven't had a strike at TransLink for almost 15 years. Generally now, the public sector doesn't strike. Like the teachers were very much the anomaly. I say get rid of all that redundancy. It's not worth it to save for a possible 1 or 2 week shutdown 10 years from now.
And Smith points out the cost is close to $800,000.
Just in board pay.
That's what I'm talking about.
That doesn't include all the redundancies. Like these companies each have their own HR departments. They have their own purchasing departments, their own IT departments. But they're all TransLink.
Isn't it funny that I've heard leaders in this community saying that nonprofits should pool all of those things? Little nonprofit organizations, and here we have these giant government operations that repeat costs.
Well, they build their kingdoms, right?
Yes, exactly.
So the manager wants his kingdom, and he's now $150,000 a year. Now he's $200,000 a year, and he's building his kingdom because it's more important. That's the problem at TransLink, is he had too many kingdom builders.
Okay, now that you're party to all the inside goings on, not that you weren't earlier, what are some of the timelines you can expect? What do you see happening when? I
think they're going, obviously August things shut down anyways.
Of course.
So I think in the fall. I'll be curious to see, I'm not I'm not sure if the province is actually going to tinker with the legislation much for governing TransLink. I think they should. I think there's a few little things that need to change.
Yes, and did they not just leave the House yesterday?
Yeah, the House rose, I think, yesterday. So I'm not even sure if they're going to have a fall session. But there are things that need to be done. The main thing, though, is the board and the mayors need to actually get on the same page and start looking within for some efficiencies in order to do some of the lower cost items that were in their plan.
Yeah, and is anybody, perhaps some business leaders, anybody going to sit down and say, okay, here's what the plebiscite was trying to do. This is what we want to do with X dollars. Let's look at that agenda. And which of these things do we really want to continue doing, and where do we get those monies?
Yeah, my hope is the mayors actually do prioritize their plan. Instead of just spending $7.7 billion, which is what it turned out to be, prioritize it. Tell us what projects should go first so that we can start tackling them one at a time.
Yeah. If you were asked to sit on the core review, would you be happy to do that? Or?
On a core review, the CTF, we try not to sit on these things because they often hamstring you in being able to criticize what's going on or critique or bring other ideas.
Yeah, can't have that.
But believe me, I have lots of ideas on how TransLink can save money, and whoever's doing the core review will be getting a long letter from me with a bunch
give
of...
us one.
To say mine? Kill the transit police. The transit police cost $34 million a year. And 2/3 of what they do is check fares.
Yes.
The average transit cop only works on 10 serious or property crime files a year. That's less than one a month. So let's take that money, hire twice as many transit security officers so you have lots of eyes on the street, and sock away $15 million and put it into actually moving people around the region.
I told you, I'm voting for you to be CEO. Okay, Jordan.
Thank you, David.
It was a great triumph. It was a wonderful citizen action. I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it, folks. No. Thanks for being with us today. And next week, Bruce Ralston, NDP MLA for the Surrey District, will be here to talk about the Community Safety Act. How safe is it really? Thanks for being with us here on Shaw Community Television Cable Forum. Good night.